band is this?
Everybody poops sometimes.
Give us this.
Wake up, sweetness.
Your first time should be more than special.
I'm in, Savannah said. Good Lord, Gemma.
When a man and a woman, in this case, really, really love each other, what happens is they fuck.
Ooh, hello?
Oh, dang it, I lost my fish. This next word almost sounds like Quidditch. Quidditch, me lad. Diana Agosiagath an Fiedian.
As much as I love fucking you, sweetness. We stared into each other's eyes whilst I moaned in ecstasy.
Having consumed half of the bourbon. I keep saying bourbon. You know, every time I mess up on a word, Stunt Mama just shows up.
She had her seductive smile on her lips.
I said we couldn't have sex. I didn't say anything about everything else.
Ew. Happy to help. Biatch. You are the spark of light and the vastness of my night. His note, like a finality to a beautiful, breathtaking song.
Good evening, everybody. It's good to see you. Killa, thank you for the lurk. I know you've got your stream coming up as well. And Mama House Gaming. It is wonderful to see you, as always. Stunt Mama's mama.
She hadn't made a milkshake in years, for fear that they would return.
Yes.
She starts the blender reluctantly. In the distance, screams. The boys had returned. They were coming to her yard.
That's right. Thank you so much for the resub at 20 months. My goodness. That's a long time. Ashball, I'm here but not listening. I need to go back and listen to the beginning of this book. Well, that's understandable. Kay's here as well. Hi, Kay. Hey, y'all. Just popping in to say, hey, I have another early one tomorrow. I get that completely. And Rexter, my dude. What's up? Let me add to the squats. Huh. It didn't update. Well, I know I owe 10, but I don't know why it didn't update on the screen. Hi there, Mitchell. I listened to chapter 1 earlier today. Pretty intense, huh? Pretty intense. Started off with a bang. That's for sure. Oh, how's everybody doing? How's the weekend been? Yesterday we had the kids' soccer, which we got rained on, so that was fun. Came home, got him a nice warm bath, had some lunch, and then we went over to our local humane shelter because they were having a kitten shower, so we donated a couple of bucks to that and got to see some very adorable, tiny, weeks-old kittens. Absolutely precious. And then I haven't got the puzzle ready. Hold on. There's your puzzle. Lovely, nice. Just a place I'd like to be, I think. And then in the evening, the kiddo had a school baseball thing, and he got to do the high fives from the dugout and stuff like that. So we did that. And then I would say I had a rough morning for sure. Yes, this morning kind of sucked. Not gonna lie. My heart stuff is definitely giving me a run for my money lately. Today I decided to, well, normally my wife would mow, but she can't do that right now because of a restriction, so I did it. And to make a long story short, after about halfway doing the whole thing, when you combine the back, which isn't much, the weed whacking, and then the front yard, I started really feeling it. And by the time I was done, I wasn't sure if I was going to make it back inside, to be honest. It was pretty rough. So, but I did, thankfully. I ate a little something, drank a little something, took 10-15 minutes to kind of just regulate myself. I took a quick shower because I was super clammy. And then I rested and slept for about an hour just so I could kind of get back to my functioning self. So, yeah, things that should be easy or used to be easy aren't as easy anymore. So after I woke up, I sent a message off to my doctor, to my heart doc, just letting him know what's happened. Excuse me, gosh. So we'll see. We will see. Hopefully I get a response tomorrow or Tuesday. I don't see them though until June, like middle of June. So not much for me to do until then other than to monitor myself and, well, don't do that again. So. Ugh. Excuse me. So I'm full of yawns tonight. I apologize. I do have my tea, though, of course. Big hugs. I appreciate it. Whoa. Almost dropped the lid. Mr. Rampage. After hours, Broalition. What's up? How are you, sir? How are you? Ooh. Oh, also, I have decided, I still don't know why that number isn't showing up. That's very annoying. I have decided that, I'm gonna save up for a better mixer. This one, like, does the job, so to speak. It allows me to push sound to the computer, but I'm gonna save up for the Rode 2 Duo. It's about $500. Long term though, it'll be well worth it. It'll be well worth the investment. So, thinking about you both and hoping for the best health soon. Thank you. Thank you, Mama House. Thank you, Mama. Got 2 mamas in the chat. And a Tacky Corgi. Hi, Tacky. Y'all ready for some more of this amazing story? Huh? I hope so. Because I am. That much I know for sure. Right after I get all my yawns out. Sheesh. I guess I could give up my mama status in here if it causes confusion. No. There's mama and mama. Just different pronunciations. That's all. Mama, mama. Ooh. I don't know what page we're on because there's no page numbers, but I do know that we're on chapter 4 because it says so at the top of the page. Big brain. Big brain. Okay? Cool. Let's see. Where did we end off last time? I'm trying to remember. Oh, that's right. So she was being carried off because she couldn't really walk. And she closed her eyes and she was pretending that she was at a campfire with her normal people, with Jason there. And her parents and, you know, her family, basically. And that they were telling funny stories and just enjoying the fire and each other's company. But, yeah, that's not the case. So without further ado, those Jasons are quite the characters, aren't they? Aren't they, though? I mean, come on. Every book needs a Jason. That's, you know, I'm just going to throw that out there. And every stream needs a squat counter that works. And why is mine not? I don't know. I see it right here in Streamlabs, or Stream Elements. It's working. It says 10. Not a Julian? No, there's a Julian in here as well. But I think you knew that. I think you knew that. Oh, that reminds me. Since you said Friday the 13th. Friday the 17th is my 3-year Twitch anniversary. I realize normally I don't stream on Fridays. However, because of the special occasion, I will be streaming. And because I love the game so much... Thank you. Thank you. Because I love the game so much, I'm going to play Helldivers with friends and whoever. And we'll see what happens. But yeah, it's going to be fun. So, Friday the 17th. There's no subathons or extra stuff. It's just a bonus stream. That's all. So don't feel like you have to be prepared for or with anything. It is just another opportunity to hang out and watch me die in a game, basically. All right. On that note, let me get back to that other screen over there so I can keep an eye on things. Excuse me. Long day. Yada, yada, yada. Chapter 4. Exclamation point Orthea, if you want to find out more about this book and other books written by our streamer friend. That's right. Written by our streamer friend, That Violin Chick. I'm going to take a sip of my tea and then we're going to get into it. It's so good. It's so soothing on the throat. Chapter 4. Another bed? The snapping of flames continued, and one wall of the tent glowed brightly from the campfire on the other side. Crickets told Fiona it was after nightfall, although how late it was she couldn't decide. She pushed aside the thick red quilt and sat up. Carefully, she stretched each arm and leg and waited for the surge of pain she'd felt when the doctor examined her. Nothing. Fiona rested a hand on her ribs and realized there were too many layers of clothing binding her midsection. Someone had wrapped her midsection while she slept, no doubt to stabilize it while the bruises healed. She had seen it done in her village on numerous occasions. Quiet voices fluttered in through the open flap of the tent's entrance. Fiona recognized Julian's low tones, but didn't recognize the melodic voice that answered him. Words floated into clarity sporadically. Bruising. Limerick. Baffled. They were discussing her. She sat up and rubbed a hand over her face. The voices halted. Surely they hadn't heard her. When two figures appeared in the doorway, she knew they somehow had. Julian's hands rested on his hips, and he looked uneasy. Who could blame him? He stood next to a brunette, slender and refined despite her dirty clothes. Streaks of mud decorated her cheeks and chin. "You're awake." She had a soft, feathery voice, and her accent mirrored that of one of others Fiona met earlier. "How do you feel?" Fiona stretched and tested her body. "I feel fine," she said, astonished at the lack of pain. "How is that possible?" "I gave you a potion to drink," the woman said as she moved to her bed and rested a cold hand on Fiona's forehead. Fiona was instantly suspicious. "A potion? Are you a witch?" Julian snorted from the doorway. The woman smiled unperturbed. "We don't use that term, dear." "Melanie is a shade," Julian cut in. "A sorcerer of good." His gaze turned to the tall woman. "There are hundreds, maybe more. But she's the best." "I would hardly say that." And I completely lost my place. I would hardly say that," Melanie chuckled. Fiona shook her head forcefully, feeling her hair shift against her back. "I don't know anything about magic, and I don't want it used on me." "If it wasn't for the potion, you would likely be dead," Melanie said. "It was just bruising." Fiona raised her voice. Magic had always been something to fear in her town, in her world. "Keep away from me." The woman pursed her lips, turned gracefully on her heels, and exited the tent without another word. Julian shook his head. "Best not to speak out of turn," he told his guest before following suit. Fiona rolled her eyes and laid back on the cot. She stared at the ceiling, hardly seeing it as she turned her dilemma over and over in her mind. She was in Limerick, but it wasn't Limerick anymore. She thought back to the town's takeover by the Vikings, but could not think of anything more unusual than the slaughter of her people. Whatever had occurred, she was now in a new place. When Julian returned sometime later, he came bearing food and a metal jug filled with fresh, cold water. Fiona wolfed down biscuits and venison, forgetting he was there, and chugged the water for several minutes. Julian reached over and took it from her. "Easy. You'll make yourself sick." She reddened, heat prickling at the back of her neck, and nodded. "Of course. Sorry." "Irish Miner, what's up, man? Good to see you." "Congrats on getting almost first." Who got actual first? I completely missed it. I know somebody did. Mama House Gaming did. That's right. Congrats. Yes. Well done. He sat on the end of the bed and stared at his boots. Fiona sensed he was uneasy around her. But then, wouldn't she be too? If some stranger showed up calling her another name and trying to kiss her? "When can I expect my brownie then?" It's in the mail, actually. Yeah. First class. It's made in China, but it's on the way. "Look, obviously I'm confused. Something is wrong with me," she said. "I apologize for the unease I have caused you." He smiled and took her hand. Fiona fought the urge to draw back her hand, unsure at this kind gesture. "Melanie explained it all to me. You've done no harm." But the smile wavered. "Explained it all to you? What does that mean?" "She said you've come from another land. One like this one, but separated by a veil." "I'm not sure what she's talking about." Fiona looked down at their clasped hands, that familiar hand that wasn't Jason's but looked just like his. It is why you say you are in Limerick, and why we say we are in Orthea. They are identical lands, parallel to each other. How does she know this? She's a shade, a powerful one. She knows all about the levels of existence. Fiona thought on this for a long, quiet moment. It made sense, oddly. So my friend Emma, she's... we don't know, Julian answered patiently. She could be anywhere or nowhere. Not everything is guaranteed to be exactly as it was in your world. Is there a chance she is here somewhere? I have to find her, Fiona said. And what if she isn't? And you spend the rest of your days trying to find someone who does not exist? In this world, you mean? Yes. They stared at each other. Julian looked annoyed, and Fiona imagined she looked as desperate as she felt. She struggled to find words, but frustration welled up and blocked anything coherent she could come up with. Anger silenced her. Julian broke the tense silence. You should get some rest. I'll check on you in the morning. Julian released Fiona's hand, and she shuddered. The separation was almost physically painful. She closed her eyes, trying to halt the tears that threatened to flow. Julian noticed and reached out to retake her hand. I promise it will get better. We will help you any way we can. He gently placed her hand on her abdomen and left her to the silence and her own morbid thoughts. Small break in the story. Fiona found her new group to be more welcoming than she expected. When she exited her tent the next morning, she was greeted with broad smiles and shy waves. They looked to be mostly peddlers and consisted of several large families and a few stragglers like Julian and Dax. The nursemaids, Leah and Natalie, took away her tattered and stained frock and fitted her with a new one to wear. They bathed her in the stream nearby, an experience that was mildly embarrassing to Fiona, but the two women just clucked their tongues and informed her that this was nothing unusual for them. Leah was 17 years old, like Fiona. Her curly orange hair was pulled back into a severe bun, but her features were soft and round, and her body curved a bit more than Fiona's. Her smile revealed a deep set of dimples, one on each side of her face. This made her laugh contagious, and when she giggled, everyone joined her. Natalie was tall, thin, and only 12, a mere wisp of a girl, and she was half Fiona's size and plain with mouse-brown hair that stretched below her elbows. Her chocolate-colored eyes sparkled with amusement while she told Fiona of being born on an apple farm. Both had been taken captive by a slaver and purchased by the doctor. He taught them the practice of nursing and medicine and gave them their freedom in exchange for 10 years of steady service. Leah was 7 years in, while Natalie still had 9 years to go. They were chatty, so Fiona had little reason to speak much. For this, she was grateful. She sat in the stream and closed her eyes, enjoying the feeling of her skin being scrubbed down. She was being cleansed of all the awful things that had transpired in the Limerick attack. Hi, Purple. It's good to see you. Need to get back to streaming. Please. I haven't seen you stream in a while. Fiona realized with a start that she had been lulled to sleep by the two women and their conversation. She sat up quickly and rubbed at her heavy eyes. Water streamed off her shoulders and melted back into the stream like a homesick child. So many hugs. I love the hugs. You have new emotes though? Well, that's cool. I'm so sorry, Fiona said. A rustle above the stream caught her attention, but when her eyes snapped up to look, she saw nothing but bows waving in the wind. She gazed around her a moment longer, so sure she'd heard something and yet afraid to be correct. Still nothing but nature. Her mind was playing tricks on her, convincing her that she was going mad. Maybe she is because she's in another world. Doo-doo-doo-doo. Leah and Natalie grinned. Never you mind, Leah said. We're finished now. You need to rest. They helped Fiona out of the stream and dried her with linen before dressing her in a new dress. Leah ran a white bone comb through her long hair and knitted it into a neat braid down her back, fastening it with a thin string of leather. Before you sleep, you need to eat, Natalie said. Come. A whole new world. Wait, hold on. A whole new world. There you go. Reverb. The two women, still chatting away about whatever they could think of, led Fiona up the hill to an encampment. Very nice. Thank you. Thank you. You like the new mic, by the way? Thanks. I like it too. I need a better mixer. That's the downside. But we'll work on that. The supper line was already starting, with women and children taking the lead. The men scooted back to make room for the three women joining them, bowing their heads respectfully. I'm not used to this kind of treatment, Fiona whispered to her new friends. It's the way of our people, Leah whispered back. Women are the birth givers and, as such, have the first choice among, well, anything. I could get used to that. Fiona's words brought on a flurry of giggles from Leah and Natalie. I could get used to being around the two of you as well. More laughter. When they reached the front, a wrinkled old woman ladled stew into a bowl carved from wood and slapped a hard biscuit into Fiona's free hand. She flashed a toothless grin and waved her on. Fiona scurried to an open section of grass. Oh. Lindy. Thanks for the follow, Lindy. How you doing? Appreciate it. She waited for her companions to join her, which they did momentarily, before digging in. It was just about the time that they were handing their empty bowls to the dish man by the food wagon that Fiona saw him. Julian sat on the other side of the supper area, his legs crossed and his bowl perched on his knee. Dax stood next to him, with fingers curled around his bowl and biscuit as he ladled stew into his hungry mouth. As much as the child ate, it was surprising that he was so thin. It was a wonder no one had fitted him with a shirt that didn't hang loosely off his frame. Julian's eyes lifted and locked on to Fiona's gaze. Her face flamed, and she dropped her eyes to her hands, knotted tight in front of her. She didn't know what to make of his face. So set and unreadable. You should talk to him at the bonfire tonight, Leah said, startling her. Dax? Fiona feigned innocence. She snuck a furtive peek back at Julian. He had resumed eating while patiently allowing Dax to rest his bony bottom on his knee. It was as if Fiona wasn't there at all. She didn't know what was worse, being invisible or being too noticeable. Natalie rolled her eyes. Julian, of course. Fiona had been staying in the two nursemaids' tent, and Julian had avoided her ever since the night with Mulaney. She figured her arrival had left him with a bad taste in his mouth, and she couldn't blame him. Although, as she turned to follow her friend, she swore she saw him glance over at her again. She hurried forward without a double-checking, just in case she was wrong. And that's chapter 4. So, it seems like Fiona is basically starting to kind of, I don't want to say adapt, but more so come to her senses about where she is, or more importantly, where she is not. And just kind of going with the flow, I guess you could say. Delicious. Absolutely delicious. All right. Chapter 5. Oh, based off of some of the text I can see, it looks like we're switching from Fiona's situation over to Ivar, the other somewhere else in their land, or in some land, not sure. But yeah, at some point the two will meet up, I'm sure. I was thinking of trying to read Citadel by C.M. Alongi, or Dreams Come to Life by Adrian Kress. I don't know either of those, actually. So, Lindy, I can't read books that I don't have permission to read. So, like this one, I think I mentioned was, I think I told you it was by that violin chick. So she gave me permission to read it. And I've read, if you look at my About section and look at the books that I've read so far, they're all mostly from recent authors that are newer to the scene. And they allowed me to read their stuff and, you know, promote it and all that good stuff. Yep. It's my impression of the dance. And now I'm dizzy. Okay. All right. Chapter 5. The Mordors gathered after nightfall in the dining hall of the town they had just taken. Fires burned bright outside as bodies and their homes turned into ash. They liked to leave nothing behind for chance survivors. It wasn't likely there were any, however, since the men took pride in being thorough. Each man received an allotment from the spoils based on his contribution to the task of slaughter and mayhem. It was Ivar's way of keeping loyalty, besides fear and respect. Ivar sat on the edge of the bench, watching his men tear into hunks of meat and chug down mugs of ale. Supper was always a noisy affair. They grunted with satisfaction like wild dogs on a carcass. He shoved his empty plate to the side and stood, jamming one hand into his pocket of his belt to make sure the vial stayed safely nestled inside. He would slit the throat of every soldier under his command to protect it. Listen up. The growly voice boomed out over the length of the dining hall. Every sound vanished, and Aldo stepped into the front of the room. seen we arms crossed over his ample chest. Pack your bags tonight. We leave first thing in the morning. He looked over at Ivar, who nodded his approval. Get going. The night is growing older, and so are we. Peals of laughter filled the air. Ivar stood against a brick wall in the back as his best friend approached him. Is she secure? Aldo nodded. I just came from there. Pavlo and Nicholas are on watch. She better not go anywhere until we leave tomorrow. Ivar never trusted anyone save for himself and perhaps Aldo. At the very least, Aldo was the only human being who had yet to betray him. I can read, I swear. Even his own mother had her undoings. I will check on them throughout the night. Ivar nodded. I know. It was the closest he ever came to thanking someone. He took his leave of the conversation and stepped into the chilly night air. Stars twinkled overhead, and the moon swelled high in the sky. A scream pierced the night. The woman. Ivar cursed under his breath and charged toward the captive's tent. For a burly man, he could move quickly. He reached the tent and burst inside without warning. His prisoner, a petite young lady with dark hair, sat against the cot frame, a gag in her mouth and tears sliding down her face. She stared up in terror as a wiry framed tower over her. Shut up, Pavlo sneered. He backhanded her hard enough to twist her head to the side. She blinked and blood appeared in a thin rivulet from her mouth. What is the meaning of this? Ivar roared, clenching his meaty hands into fists like hammers. Aldo appeared behind him. Pavlo jumped and whirled around. She was trying to escape, sir. He bowed. Behind him, the sobbing woman leaned her head against the wooden bed frame. She shook her head in frantic disagreement. Where is Nicholas? Ivar was not convinced that the man was telling the truth. Nature called, Pavlo said, straightening his shoulders as if it would help him meet the beast of a man who was his commander. You laid your hands on her without my permission. Ivar narrowed his eyes. No, Pavlo objected. Another man stepped into the tent and froze. What's going on? Nicholas said, shoving long blonde hair out of his eyes. I will not have her harmed any further, Ivar snarled. She is for a special purpose. You are done here, Pavlo. Ivar exited the tent, and Aldo grasped the man by the arm and jerked him out as well. The three moved to the front of the camp, where the other soldiers were gathering out of curiosity. You will follow orders without question, Ivar shouted to his men. You will not defy me in secret. Aldo shoved the frightened Pavlo to his knees for all to see. Then he drew a long knife, placed it under the man's Adam apple, and sliced. Gurgling, Pavlo's eyes widened and he slumped to the side, spasming. Are we clear? Ivar called to his men. The men took a silent knee in response, fists over their hearts. The point was made. That would be the fear part of ruling, I guess. Woo! There's a break in the story. It looks like we are switching back to Fiona's perspective. Why are we packing? Fiona asked, stuffing garbs into a leather bag. Leah and Natalie were doing the same with their medicines and potions. We only stay in one spot for a few days, and then we travel to another area. It's just our way. Leah wrapped glass jars in thin strips of leather and carefully stacked them in the bag she held. Everyone? Yes, even Julian, Leah giggled. We go together. We're all one big family. Fiona took a deep, cleansing breath. Despite the absence of his attention, she still watched him every chance she got without him noticing. She longed to at least hear him say hello to her, but he never did. It was as if she didn't exist. Every so often she'd feel as if his eyes were watching her, but when she turned, he'd be talking to someone else or walking away. I don't think it matters much to him, she said, returning to her work. Perhaps. But perhaps it does. I'm not holding out much hope. Why are you so stuck on him anyway? Natalie was blunt and to the point, as usual. It's hard to explain. Heat climbed Fiona's neck. She hadn't spoken of this with anyone since her first day in camp. We have time, dear. Natalie would not be dissuaded. I'm told I switched worlds. By Mulaney, Fiona began. Oh, she knows a lot, that one. It's handy having a shade round here. Natalie winked at Leah. Fiona waited a moment to make sure they focused. No sense in telling a tale that would need repeating simply because the listeners didn't pay attention. The land I came from was called Ireland. I lived there with my parents, Aideen and Lachlan, and... She swallowed hard. My sister Erin. Tears welled up at the thought of her family. Leah and Natalie remained silent and waited for her to compose herself. My father was a hard worker. The whole town was. There were no neighbors, because we were all like family. Then we were attacked. She swallowed the lump rising in her throat. They were Vikings, and they hit hard and fast with no warning. They murdered and plundered and, in the process, killed my sister and parents. And Jason. She fell quiet for a moment, unable to speak. When she spoke at long last, her voice was husky. Jason and I were betrothed when I was 12 years old. It was not a willing one at first, as most betrothals go, but as the years passed, we became friends. A fondness grew in our hearts until one day we realized we had fallen in love. My father was working day and night to provide the dowry Jason's mother insisted upon. When the Vikings attacked, he had just reached that amount required. Jason disappeared into the fight, and I don't know what became of him. A sad, knowing look spread across her friends' faces. He looks like Julian? Relief washed over Fiona at Leah's words. An exact replica. I thought it was Jason at first. I guess I frightened Julian with my hasty assumptions. No one could fault you for that mistake, Natalie said, as I'm sure not many travel in the way you did. Not many at all, said a new voice at the tent's open flap. The ladies whirled around, and Mulaney smiled. I'm sorry to startle you. May I enter? By all means, Mulaney, Leah said, sweeping her arm in a grand gesture and smiling. Where have you been, young lady? Natalie asked, crossing a plump arm over her chest. meditating. Fiona lowered her eyes and turned back to her work as the others chatted. She tuned them out and instead put her thoughts towards her friends and Jason, Julian, whatever his name was. She longed to run to him and feel his arms wrap around her waist and his lips press against hers, to have him whisper her name and know who she was. She became aware of eyes watching her and pulled out of her thoughts. Leah, Natalie, and Mulaney were silently regarding her. What? We asked if you were still planning on staying in our tent or moving to Mulaney's, Leah said, rolling her eyes in exasperation. Exasperation. I can read words. Oh, I didn't know her tent was an option. If you are going to learn, it would be best to stay with me, Mulaney said, her dark eyes unreadable. Learn? Who said anything about learning? The only way people who can cross worlds are current or future shades, Mulaney explained, much in the manner of a mother to a child. It raised Fiona's hackles. I'm not one of you, she yelled, stomping her feet like a child. I wish you had a choice. Mulaney looked mildly irritated. I didn't ask for this either. But the sooner you face reality, the easier it will be on both of us. Reality is where I come from, Fiona shouted. It's where I want to go back to. Back to your burned town? If I must? There is nothing there for you anymore. You might as well get used to it. Mulaney turned on her heel and exited the tent, making it clear the discussion was over. Fiona drew a hard, furious breath and collapsed in a heap on the ground, face buried in her hands and sobs wrenching from her small frame. Mulaney was right, in her own rude and thoughtless way. There really was nothing worth trying to go back to. Indeed, Fiona had spoken without thought too, if the possibility of returning even existed. She was certainly in no condition to figure that out. She did know one thing, as her tears subsided. I'm staying with you two. Stay with us or not, you're still destined to be her apprentice, Natalie said softly, kneeling by her. I'm afraid there isn't much say in the matter. For what it's worth, Leah interjected, in our world being a shade is a coveted gift. Fiona didn't answer, and eventually they left her to her tears. Another break in the story. Same place, same people, just time moving on. They walked next to the supply wagon as they left camp. Everyone was silently at first, drowsy in the morning air. Fiona huddled inside her new brown hooded garb, arms pressed tightly to her chest and head bowed. Leah and Natalie walked beside her in a similar posture. Mulaney had not spoken to any of them since their confrontation the day before. Fiona was grateful. They crossed through the forest, stopping in a small valley for rest and their midday meal. The food wagon's occupants, the old man and woman, handed everyone a hearty chunk of smoked ham and skin of water. Best keep your strength up for all this walking, the old woman told Fiona, winking. Would hate to see you riding on some young man's shoulders. She moved on, and Leah and Natalie giggled. Fiona shot them a dirty look, and they quieted. ladies." It was a passing acknowledgement, but Fiona's heart jumped, and she swung around to see Julian walk by. He smiled, nodded, and continued past them. "Oh, for goodness sake," Leah said in exasperation. "When will he just fall for you already? I'm so tired of the pining." "Hush," Natalie scolded her. "Things take time. Who knows if they are meant for each other anyway?" "I'm sitting right here," Fiona reminded them. So you are." Leah smiled and went back to her food. The bustle of preparing to resume the journey began, and children ran to and fro, gathering up what their parents required. Fiona spotted Dax in the mix as he loped, all arms and legs, up to Julian, and handed him a freshly filled skin of water. Julian smiled and playfully rubbed the boy on the top of his head. "Mad Locust, hey there, how you doing?" His expression was so happy, so at ease, that Fiona felt a pang of jealousy towards the young child. After all, she should be there with them. "He's not Jason," Natalie murmured in her ear before taking her place in the procession. The camp and the documents moved forward at a slow, steady pace. Fiona stood where she was, watching each person pass by. It was tempting to turn and disappear into the forest, to try to get back to where she belonged, to Jason. She backed away toward the edge of the pathway, waiting for her chance to duck out of sight. Surely she could do it. One more step back. She reached behind her for a tree to steady herself on. Instead, fabric met her grasp. She whirled around and found herself eye to eye with Mulaney. "Going somewhere?" She raised an eyebrow. Fiona blushed sheepishly. "I'm sorry, I thought..." "Thought what?" Mulaney interrupted. "That leaving would be better for us. For you. Are you so delusional that you refuse to see the danger that lies in wait for anyone who strays?" "Says the person who seems to think I know magic," Fiona retorted. "You don't know magic," Mulaney said. "You have the blood of a shade in you, but that does not make you anything useless. That does not make you anything unless you harness and wield it. Where I come from, sorcery and magic were not only forbidden, but a killable offense. You aren't in Ireland anymore, or do I need to remind you? Where will you go?" Fiona's heart sank. She dropped her eyes to the ground and took a deep breath to compose herself. "Fine." Mulaney's expression softened. "That's better. Walk with me." She took Fiona's hand and led her back to the rest of the travelers. They continued in relative silence, listening to the jovial talk of those around them. The food wagon's occupants were particularly noisy as the old man and woman got into a friendly argument on who was the better at cooking veal. It ended with a strange male voice shouting above the din. "You both will kill us with all of your veal, so shut up and never make the stuff again." Laughter filled the air, and the argument died after that. "Nice couple," Fiona managed, grasping for something to say to the regal woman next to her. "They will poison us one day with their food," Mulaney said gruffly. "But it could be worse." Her lips twitched as if she fought a smile. A cry suddenly wafted over the din, and the noise of the crowd died down. It was a man from the sound of it, and Mulaney's eyes narrowed. "Something's wrong," she said flatly. Starting for the front of the caravan, Fiona followed. A man appeared on horseback. His steed galloped at full speed, and the man waved one arm wildly. "Get off the road, Mordors!" "Off the road!" the crowd responded. Mulaney turned to face them, her expression urgent. "Get off the bloody road!" Fiona stayed close to Mulaney as the caravan clumsily turned and entered the depths of the forest. Abandoning the dirt road. Really? Okay. Abandoning the dirt road. Good grief. They stumbled down through the loose dirt and wet leaves. 2 men stayed behind to push together the grooves left in the soil by the wagon. Anything to hide them. The wagon halted, and the cooks began throwing sticks and leaves up to the sides to hide it. Women ushered the children farther still, behind thick trees. They hunkered down, hardly daring to breathe. The scout led the whole thing. "They'll be here any minute," he hissed at those who had not yet found a place to hide. Mulaney placed herself between the wagon and the road, her hair blending in with the dark base of the tree. Fiona crouched next to her and gathered her skirt together in a tight fist. The creak of leather was heard, then the falling of heavy footsteps. The Mordors made no secret of their position, and Fiona did not doubt the reason why. "Stay down," Mulaney whispered, pulling her head back to hide it from view. "Hopefully, they'll go right on by." Fiona listened to the sound of the men trampling past for a few minutes. How many were there? She peeked around the tree. The line of men looked very familiar, but she couldn't be sure until she noticed an unusually large, hulking man looming next to a shorter, squatter man. The 2 men killed her mother. They were the Vikings. And that was chapter 5. So there's something interesting I learned about this book, or this story in general. Hannah Gordon, the author, that violin chick, initially intended to write the story as episodes, essentially, like little mini novel episodes, which in KDP, when you're publishing to Amazon, is something that you can now do. It's a new thing. Normally it was just, book in Kindle form, hardback cover, paperback, that kind of thing. But they added a new, kind of a new option, if you will. And you can tell this is true because the way in which the chapters end almost makes it seem like it's the end of an episode that you would watch on TV. Or maybe you would get to the commercial break for, and it would like cut the scene from there. And then when you come back, everything continues. I also recognize it for myself because that's the way I usually try and write when I write stories. Especially if there's a moment of tension or something is about to be revealed or learned, I would find a breaking point and then continue the story from there in the next chapter. There's a few different reasons to do it. But for me, it allowed me to draw out the tension instead of just going, and there it is. I could actually, pull on that a little bit more and get a few more words into the story about that thing. And apparently, we have an ad starting soon. Apparently. Believe it when I see it. which we might not. I guess it kind of depends on the luck of the draw right now. Anyway, how's everybody doing? I can see the puzzle is humming along slowly but surely. Wonderful, wonderful. Got most of the edges done. Missing a few edge pieces. Every time I glance over, I'm always tempted to just dive in and see if I can find a few. But I try not to. I try to leave it alone. I'm sewing while I listen tonight. Ooh, what are you sewing, Tacky? What are you making? Sorry, Tack. We agreed I could call you Tack. What are you sewing for us? Laying in bed and slowly falling asleep. Excellent. Well, I hope you do. I had a really just rough, not much sleep kind of night last night. Our dog is still sick, and he was making all kinds of loud noises because of his illness. Oh, it drove me nuts. Absolutely nuts. I'm not going to continue reading until I know for sure the ad is over, whether anyone actually sees the ads or not. But we have about a minute left, and it should be done. And then we can keep going. So I'm staring at the puzzle, trying to see if I can find some more of those edge pieces. They're elusive. So elusive. Poor doggo, yeah. Poor humans too, because he's loud. He's so loud. Oh, is this an edge piece? This is an edge piece. Ha ha! And then I bet this one goes there. There you go. Sorry if I messed up your puzzle, but I found 2 pieces, and I'm so happy for it. Working on some scrunchies. I made my tags with ribbon that worked out well, so I'm texting. Your what? Wait, now you have ads? It just told me the ads were done. I'm so confused. Okay, you're back. All right, good. I made tags with ribbon that worked out well, so I'm texting those. You're working on scrunchies. That's the thing I understand the most. I know this much about sewing. This much. You're testing those out. Okay. Makes sense. Good. Well, I hope it works. I'm on a tablet. Typing is hard. You know what? Twitch, for on any kind of mobile device, stinks when it comes to typing because they don't autocorrect enough. So you'll start saying something thinking it's autocorrecting and it doesn't. And then, like, sometimes it doesn't even capitalize letters when you've added a period. For me, at least. Like, what the heck? Like, help me out here, man. Help my privileged self out. I'm used to it on my phone. Anyway. Enough complaining about nonsense. Let's say we read another chapter. They just scurried off the road, hid their tracks as best as they could, and Fiona realized that the Vikings that just kind of scurried on by were the same that killed her mother, or at least two of the group were the ones that killed her mother, or at least that's how they look to her. Whether they actually did or not is another, another thing. I tried to use the swipe to type thing as it makes me write the stupidest words. Yeah, I get that. And hi, Stunt Mama. Book ASMR. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, Stunt Mama has redeemed Book ASMR. I haven't done that with this microphone yet, so we're gonna try it out. Well, that ruined it. Jeez. Plague, what's up? Did that even come through the mic? I'm assuming it did, but I have no idea. I haven't had that redeemed with the new microphone yet, so. Yes? Okay, good. It was all right. The page flick? Okay. Yeah, it may, because of the style, because of the style of mic it is and the stuff that's in here, it may have blocked out some of the other sounds on purpose. Oh, boy. Stunt, are you streaming tomorrow? Don't follow me, guys. I'm a bad streamer. I bloody hope she is. All right, then. Yeah, I have a feeling I'm going to wake up not feeling the best. So I'm hoping you're streaming because I'll need something to tune into. I mowed the grass earlier today, Stunt, and I almost didn't make it back inside. So there you go. All right. We're on chapter 6. Chapter 6. I don't know what page number, but I do know the link to the book. Please check that link, click on it. Go check out this book and our author, another streamer, That Violin Chick. Go check out her channel as well. She is an amazing violinist, like insanely good. Today was my half marathon. Wow, Plague Doc, that's awesome. Half marathon, good for you. I agree with Atkinson. Morning streams is the highlight of my day, and when Stunt Mama doesn't stream in the morning, I feel like a homeless man. Oh, Rexter, that is lovely and powerful and vivid all at the same time. So yeah, if I wake up feeling like junk, I'm going to get my kid off to school and then probably take the day off. So we'll see how it goes. Anyway, enough stalling. Atkinson. We love you too, Rexter. And I really mean that. Oh, I also owe 10 squats. So let's do that. Man, I can't wait to move and have an office space that's not restricted so you guys can see me no matter where I am. It'll be amazing. 13.1 miles in 2 hours and 34 minutes. Man, that's amazing. That is amazing. You should be immensely proud of yourself. That's fantastic. Well done. Well done. I can't even mow my grass without feeling like my heart's going to give in. So, all right. Chapter 6. Melanie felt Fiona tense and rested a thin hand on the girl's shoulder. Shh. Fiona dropped her face into her hands and willed herself to stay quiet. To stay where she was. These were her parents' killers. And here they were, walking free and clear. It wasn't right. She wanted to jump out and grab for the nearest sword. She could see herself slashing at chest armor, driving the wide blades into them as far as the shiny metal would go. She smelled the metallic blood spilling from their wounds as they tried to recover from their surprise. Melanie's hand became firmer, pushing her into the tree as if she could see what Fiona saw. There was no going out there, no screaming in anger or terror, only listening as the Mordors passed with no one to challenge them. That's the one thing I need in my life, a lawn. Condo living has its perks, but I miss mowing the grass with my dad. Yeah, memory unlocked right there. I get it. One day. Stunt Mama is also correct. It's super overrated. Only in the United States do people covet their lawns and spend so much freaking money making them look amazing. It's grass. I'm allergic to grass, so I can't. There you go. Rock garden for you, Tack. The dirt threatened to choke them, and people pulled out handkerchiefs to cover their mouths and noses to quell the urge to cough. One noise too loud, and they were all as good as dead. The Mordors were none too light-footed, and undoubtedly savaged. Even the birds overhead fell into silence, as if they also were at risk of death. When several long minutes had passed since the Mordors had gone by, members of the camp began to move around. The scout who had warned them rode off to make sure there was plenty of space between them and their would-be captors. They would not leave until he gave the all-clear. In the meantime, Fiona helped wipe down the horses and clear the wagons of debris. "Are you okay?" Fiona startled. Julian was suddenly beside her. "Oh, You seem upset. I wanted to make sure you were okay. Not really. Fiona smiled sadly. They look like the men who killed my family. They are not the same, Melanie said from nearby. The woman had the hearing of a bat in total darkness. Yes, I know, like Julian is not Jason. Fiona rolled her eyes. She was ready to scream at someone, hit a tree, anything to feel a little better. Atkinson, can you check your PayPal, please? Sure. The alert didn't come out. What alert? What did you do? Rexter. I see it. Dude. Love you, brother. Just making sure. I'm assuming I can say this out loud. Is that all right? Are you okay with that? Rexter just tipped $100. I don't even know what to say. Thank you so much. That goes straight towards the new the mixer that I'm trying to get. Dude. Thank you. That's too much. My gosh, please. I know he hates shoutouts, but please go follow Rexter. Seriously. Rexter. I don't even know what to say right now. Seriously, that's above and beyond. In the words of Stump Mama, he drives a Lambo, don't worry. I can't thank you enough, Rexter. That was insane. And I don't know why the alert didn't go off either. That's annoying. Huh. Because I have it right here. I'm looking right at it. I'm gonna add it again just in case. Okay. I have added it. Oh. Drummers do stick together. Absolutely. Thank God squats are for subs. That's all I'm gonna say. God. You've blown me away, man. I don't even, I don't know how to thank you other than to say thank you. I am so much closer now to getting that mixer because of you. That is insane. Oh, where were we? You will be squatting for the rest of the stream. Yeah, and I'll probably keel over from that too. Oh God. That reminds me, actually, I need to reset the counter. Okay. All right. I know I was on this page. I just gotta remember where. All right. Okay. I got it. All right. Okay. Yes, I know. Like Julian is not Jason. Fiona rolled her eyes. She was ready to scream at someone, hit a tree, anything to feel a little better. There will be a lot of things about this world that are familiar to you from your old world, Mulaney said patiently. It's just too bad there isn't a little more here from there, Fiona griped. Julian took her hand and she paused. I'm sorry for all the mess you've been through. He sounded genuine. For what it's worth. Her heart fluttered as he walked back to where Dax waited anxiously for him. Are they brothers? She asked Mulaney. Jason hadn't had any siblings. Yes, but not in the traditional way. Mulaney was gathering her things and pulling her load onto her back. Fiona followed her example. Dax's mother was killed by Mordors, right in front of him. They began walking with the caravan, cautiously pulling back onto the dirt road. The trees swayed with the breeze, the sound comforting in its normalcy. And, Fiona pressed, Julian found him laying next to his mother, trying to wake her. He took him in, helped him bury her, and has taken care of him since. They are inseparable, those two. Mulaney's eyes brimmed with unshed tears. It is lucky that Dax was found, for so many children were not. Her statement hung in the air, heavy with implications Fiona didn't understand. What did she mean by that? She pondered this for a while, falling silent. Mulaney followed suit, and they found themselves in a page that I can't turn, and they found themselves in the amiable kinship of journeyers. Each was heading towards something different, together. Another quick break in the story. The caravan traveled until sundown with relative peace. When they stopped and began setting up temporary camp, Fiona was grateful. Her feet were not used to walking for so long over rocks and twigs. She was sure blisters were nestled safely amongst her toes and on the balls of her feet. She stood gingerly and helped Mulaney hammer long stakes into the ground and wrap rope securely around them. The tent was then pulled upright and a long wooden rod inserted into the middle. Once the contraption was finished, Fiona unrolled the bedding Mulaney had given her and collapsed in an exhausted heap. She allowed her eyes to close, her mind drifting to think of her mother and father, and her sister. You must be hungry, A voice startled Fiona and jerked her from slumber. Mulaney stood next to her, arms crossed and face neutral. Better hurry. Fiona scrambled to her feet and rubbed the sleep from her eyes. How long was I out? A couple hours, Mulaney answered. It's dusk now. I'm so sorry. Fiona was horrified. She had left everyone to set up camp while she lazed away on her bed. Mulaney said nothing but turned on her heel and exited the door. It was as much an invitation to follow as Fiona was likely to receive, so she meekly followed. Fires crackled in several places, and people chattered quietly. You're up. Natalie's cheery voice rose above the rest. She appeared by her friend's side and intertwined their fingers. I hope you feel better. Come, let's get some food in that empty belly of yours. The old woman at the food wagon held out a plate of steaming with food. Last of the pork, miss. You're just in time. Fiona accepted the offer and nodded her thanks. Natalie nearly dragged her to where Leah waited, knees pulled to her chin, and dress prudently tugged to her ankles. Her hair was piled on top of her head in a careless attempt at a bun. You shouldn't have let me sleep. Fiona dug into her food. I fear the camp must hate me now for not pulling my weight. Leah threw her head back and laughed, her pale throat shining in the light of the nearby flame. Pulling your weight? I think you'll be pulling more than yours soon enough. Fiona was puzzled. Mulaney's eyes sparkled mischievously. Right so. These women making trouble for you? A new, deeper voice interjected. Fiona tensed. Julian. Dax plopped down next to her while the cautious Julian lowered himself to sit next to Mulaney. The little boy munched on the leftovers of a pork chop and grinned. I'm the trouble round here. No one will contest that, Julian chuckled. It would have been the most awkward gathering Fiona had ever experienced had it not been for the young Dax. He chattered away, eliciting a laugh or scoff from each adult in turn. Fiona marveled at his skill with captivating his audience as he told jokes, spun stories, and filled the night with entertainment. Even Mulaney was smiling ear to ear as she watched. Maybe she is human, Fiona thought. People began to slowly retire as the moon reached its peak in the sky. Fires were doused, and the chatter died down. Fiona sat, watching the glowing embers of the fire, the strips of wood slowly turning to ash, falling into the last of the flames that licked desperately in a last bid to stay alive. It was almost fitting, somehow. Mulaney, that's what my coworker calls me? Huh, well, how about that? Are you a sorceress? A hand appeared in her vision, long and calloused. She looked up into the shadowed face of Julian. May I see you to your tent? She debated for a moment. Only a moment. Afraid to accept for fear that her desires would fight to the surface and reclaim her mind, torturing her more than before. Could she handle it? Should she? At last she reached out for the pale, trembling hand and grasped his. He smiled at her, and she saw what an effort it was. I don't want to trouble you, she replied. She released his hand and turned away. She only took 2 steps before her hand was back in his. He pulled her gently and spun her to face him. His lips grazed her ear, hot breath seeding daggers of desire down her neck. I'm sorry. He pulled back, his eyes dark and concerned. About how I have been, I mean. Let me make it up to you. He searched her eyes. She tried to keep a blank expression. Please, at least let me escort you to your tent tonight. Then, in the morning, maybe we can be friends. Fiona sucked in a boatload of air and held it a moment before letting it slip back out. Her fingers, still wrapped in his, tingled. Julian. Yes? His face was loaded with expectant pain as he waited for her answer. My tent is right there. Fiona nudged to the open flap with her foot. Julian was rendered speechless for a moment. He straightened and shook his head. Oh, right. Fiona smiled. Her first real smile in days. Thank you, kind sir. She curtsied to mark her words. Will I be escorted from my tent in the morning? Julian chuckled, a relieved sound that shed the intensity that had been building. Of course. Have a good night's sleep, milady. He bowed, kissed the top of her hand, and vanished into the night. And that was chapter 6. I don't think I'm good enough to call myself that. Milady, a sorceress. Or perhaps a seamstress. Or perhaps just stress. Without the seam. Just stress. Hello, I'm a stress. Do you mean seamstress? No, I meant stress. I'm sure you are. It's your magic power. You take fabric and turn it into beautiful creations. One seamstress. One string. The movie you've all been waiting for. Something like that. Cutscene. I'm not a seamstress. Yes, you are. No. Yes. And she who dies with the most fabric wins. Also, now it's a game show. I like that. Alright, it looks like, just flicking ahead, that chapter 7 is quite short. So, we will read chapter 7. Chapter 7 looks like it's flipping back over to the Ivar dead Pavlo guy with his so we'll see what they've been up to. Can I include my yam into that collection? Oh, yam. Oh my god. Yarn. I'm done. Obviously. Yam, really? Stick a fork in me. I'm done. Alright. Let's see if we can let's see if we can get through chapter 7 without any crazy segues into other types of story adventures, shall we? Okay. Pavlo's death had been sufficient. Not a word was spoken for an entire day. the silence as suffocating as a heavy blanket. Ivar liked that. He had left Pavlo's body maimed and cold, and led the men northeast. Nikolaos fastened himself to the prisoners as if his life depended on it, which it did. Ivar sat on his horse atop a hill as Aldo walked between the rows of men at attention. The Mordor army glistened in the sunlight, both from their metal armor and the sweat running down their muscular arms and legs. The next village is just 2 miles north of here, Aldo barked. We will take it the same as before. No prisoners. Fill the supply wagon. I want it quickly. I want it deadly. Are you ready? The warriors responded with a roar that filled the air and sent every man's ears ringing. There was no doubt the village could hear in the crisp air, but there was no reason to worry about that. Ivar smiled as he watched arms crossed and swords swaying gently at his side as he moved his horse to make room for his comrade to join him. They are ready, Ivar told his friend. Thank you, Aldo. My honor. Aldo gathered the reins of his steed and nodded. Mordors, called the captain, a wiry but stubborn old mule of a man. Arms at ready. Lances pounded on the ground in response. Forward, march. The thunder of the march was music to Ivar's ears, unlike music to the stream as it seems to have stopped. He rested his hands on his belt, where the vial containing the sorcerer's spirit was hidden safely. Her time was coming soon, he could feel it. He turned his horse and cantered leisurely to the front of the army to take his place as commander. Aldo followed, hanging back slightly to the right as they continued forward. In the distance, figures ran toward the village. It was a vain, useless attempt at warning each other. They'd be no match for the Mordors. A scout confirmed not a fighting man lived amongst the villagers. It was almost insulting how easy this would be. They drew closer to the huts, excitement rippling through the men as they matched in unison. They lived for this, for the kill. They pounded their weapons together or against the ground in anticipation of the blood they'd shed. When they drew close enough to see the scurrying of skirted women and the alarm of the men, they halted, except for Ivar and Aldo. They dismounted and dropped their reins to the ground. The horses stood obediently, waiting. The 2 men walked brazenly into the village and watched it with satisfaction as the road became deserted. No one wanted to face them, but they would have no choice. Where is your leader? Aldo called out gruffly as the 2 came in the middle of the village. A meek, skinny little man shuffled out from a hut and cowered before them. I am the town's mayor. Please, take what you want, but do not hurt any of us, he begged in a nasal voice that grated on Ivar's nerves. We are peaceful, and we will do you no harm. We'll take what we want, it's true, Aldo said. Although you may not like what we want. What is it? I will make it happen. The man fidgeted, terror flickering in his eyes. Aldo came face to face with him and sneered. He loomed over him by a full head. The mayor shrank back at Aldo's next words. We want blood. The man jerked, then froze momentarily before looking down at the dagger thrust into his abdomen. Aldo gripped the hilt firmly and twisted eliciting a crackling sound that gurgled up into the man's throat. Blood poured from his lips, and he sank to his knees. The metallic smell of blood filled the air, and Ivar sniffed appreciatively, closing his eyes for a moment to savor the life spilling from the man before them. This was what the Mordors were waiting for. They leaped forward and began slashing and stabbing their way through the huts and streets, sparing no man, woman, or child. Ivar took the lead, slitting throats as he went. The vial hidden at his waist began to heat, warming his hip. She lived for this, feeding off the terror and bloodshed. The violence she craved as much as he and his men did. It made her stronger and more capable of taking physical form when the time came, when they reached Old Grange. With each life that came to an end at Ivar's hand, the vial warmth grew until his skin began to burn. It was a pleasant feeling to him, a reminder of what awaited him at the end of his journey. He pressed forward and led his men into the slaughter of the entire village. Lovely. There's a break in the story. We are going back to Fiona's perspective, wherever they are. The smell was not a pleasant one. It tugged at Fiona's memory, hovering just beyond her reach. The caravan stopped at the bottom of the hill. They were loath to cross it until the word came back from the scout. With bated breath, they spotted him cantering through the grass on his horse. The wind picked up and rustled the branches of trees skirting the clearing. The scent came with it, stronger this time. Fiona's stomach churned and bile spun up into her throat. Spinning around, she scrambled for the edge of the caravan. Her legs denied her, turning to rubber and giving way. Desperately, she slapped a hand over her mouth and heaved as she crawled through the dirt. She retched and coughed. Everything from lunch coming back up. The bile burned as it found its way out, and her eyes watered. Exhausted, she collapsed on the ground, the cold earth soothing to her forehead. She coughed again and closed her eyes, willing herself into calm. The spinning in her head began to slow, and she felt herself lifted up against someone, a familiar chest. She reached up and wrapped her fingers in a fistful of his shirt, pulling herself closer. "Are you okay?" Julian murmured. Fiona fought for a way to describe what she knew waited over the hill. Instead of words, a sob shuddered out. She barely heard the snort of the horse as it arrived, or the panicked words of the scout. "Dead bodies, all of them burning." Julian tightened his grip on Fiona as he listened. Fiona took a ragged breath. She needed to get herself together and slowly sat up, reluctant to leave the safety of Julian's arms. "The Mordors leave no survivors," she said as more tears cascaded down her cheeks. "You survived an attack on your world." Melanie's arms were crossed and she looked stern. "I did with my friend Emma. Maybe there are some here that are still alive." The elderly cook shook his weathered head. "I don't like it," he informed them. "Bad stuff happened there. We should circle around it and be on our way." Melanie pursed her lips. Stelios stepped forward. "I cannot, in good conscience, skirt around such a scene," he said. "I'm a doctor, and if there are any still alive down there, I must do what I can. Well, I'll go alone if I must." "You won't be alone," Melanie said. "I'll go with you." I will, too, Natalie piped up. Searching wreckage and human remains was no small feat, and none too desirable. Yet, one by one, people stepped forward to volunteer. Fiona's eyes welled up with more tears as she recognized the humanity in the group that had taken her in. I'll go, too. She began to stand, so Julian stood quickly and pulled her up the rest of the way. Me too. He didn't release her hand. In the end, only the cook and the children stayed behind with the wagon. The rest of them donned what weapons could be found and began to trek up the hill, each lost in the thought of what they might find on the other side. The smell of burning flesh and wood grew more forceful. Fiona was sure if it wasn't for the grip of Julian's hand, she might have turned and fled back the way they had come. The wind turned hot as they drew closer, billowing dark smoke and ash into the skies. Crows squawked from nearby trees. The group cautiously made their way into the village, eyes watchful. The town looked deserted. Items were strewn everywhere as if a careless beast had gone rampant. Window flaps were wrenched down. The doors littered the ground in various jagged pieces. They kicked in doors, Fiona whispered. She became aware that she was clenching Julian's hand much tighter than she meant to. When they came to the center, the sound of crackling flames became thunderous. Fiona's eye settled on a sight she had hoped to never see again. The burning bodies of the village residents, all heaped upon each other in a huge pyre. Fiona's breath caught in her throat, and she wished to be anywhere else. She closed her eyes and breathed in and out slowly. Whether by instinct or by desperation, she saw in her mind's eye a vast green field. The blades of grass were each distinct as if she had the eyes of an eagle. The wind whistled past at a dizzying speed and the world began to spin. She shut her eyes tightly, afraid the motion would spiral her into the ground. When she finally opened one eye just a slit, she found the world drifting lazily beneath her. The sun shined down and warmed her. No wind, no sound, just peace. Good and alert, it is Easter Sunday for the Greek Orthodox. I am Greek Orthodox. Take way, Harper Tintin. Rexter, I hope you have a great time. Thank you again for your huge generosity. I hope you have a wonderful celebration. You deserve it. Absolutely. No wind, no sound, just peace. Peace, the sensation of it flooded through her, swirling in her belly and up to her chest. It stretched down her arms and legs and wrapped her in a cocoon. She closed the eye once again to bask in bliss she hadn't felt in what seemed like ages. When she opened her eyes again, the burning bodies were once more before her, and she stood firmly on the ground. She expected nausea to return, but this time it didn't. Her peacefulness remained intact somehow. She glanced up at Julian only to find him staring at her puzzled. "Are you okay?" he asked quietly. Melanie stepped in front of them, eyes piercing Fiona's very soul. "We'll talk later," she said. Then she walked away. The cleanup was half-hearted. The bodies were disposed of in the fire already, so the travelers packed up what they could and started back to the waiting caravan as the sun began to set. There was no speculation of staying overnight in the town. The smell of death was too strong, and no one had the stomach for it. The cook and children made camp at the bottom of the hill, and a somber meal of chicken and beets waited. Everyone ate in relative silence and retired to their tents for the night. And that closes chapter 7. Well, what a sad chapter to end on. So I have questions. If she is to be a shade, a sorceress herself, is this ability to find peace and this grassy area and kind of some other place in her mind, is that part of her abilities that she doesn't know she has yet? It sounds like Mulaney has an idea that it could be, or at least that's the impression we're getting. But the other question is, what's next? I mean, is there a bigger plan here to try and find her home? Is she even able to go home? I don't know. I don't know. There's definitely going to be layers to this because, or at least, I shouldn't say definitely. It seems like there's going to be layers to this because the book title is The Shades of Orthea. Not The Shade, not Orthea. The Shades of gives me the impression that there's going to be layers deep into what and where Orthea is. And then, of course, there's this old Grange, which Ivar and, who's his closest buddy? I forgot. Aldo. Ivar and Aldo. And then, he has this vial with this witch inside of it or something like that, the spirit. And they're trying to get to Old Grange so she can be released. Like, is Fiona and Mulaney gonna battle this other witch? I don't know. So many questions. I don't have the answers. But that's the cool thing. We'll just find out as it happens. All right. Well, thank you for being with me this evening and letting me read to you. I will also be reaching out to my author groups to find some other books to add to my library, to my queue, so that we have more books coming up, as I realize I have not done that yet, and I probably should. Okay. I'm gonna look for someone to raid. Hope you have a relaxing rest of your evening. Thank you. I hope I just get some decent sleep after today. I hope you have a good night too, Stepmama's Mama. I hope all of you do. It's been a pleasure to read to you. I always look forward to this time, no matter what kind of day I've had. This is my chance to relax and just dive into a story, you know? I love that. We're gonna go raid my buddy Thump Gaming. He's playing Albion online. It's his new love. Very nice guy. Very nice guy. I love getting lost in a book. Yes. Here's the raid message. If you could kindly copy paste that. I realize if you can't stick around after the raid, totally get it. But again, thank you. I can't wait to be back on Thursday so we can keep going. And then also keep reading Fourth Wing in Discord as well. Alright.